A generation without jobs. European leaders face up to the crisis of youth unemployment. Germany says it's the most pressing problem facing the continent. But is there the will or resources to find work for millions of young people? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Sue Turton. It is, say the economists, one of the consequences of the financial crisis that young people always suffer in recessions. Employers stop hiring them and new recruits are easy to let go. And the figures in Europe speak for themselves. On average, 1 in 4 young people is without a job. And in the worst affected countries, it's more than half. Italy has described Europe's youth joblessness as a true nightmare, and leaders are waking up to the problem. A summit in Paris, attended by European leaders, has been discussing a range of measures to reverse the trend. These will include an update on a youth guarantee scheme approved at an EU summit in Brussels in June. German Chancellor Angela Merkel warned at the time that the continent risked creating a lost generation. Jackie Rowland has more from Paris.
The figures really speak for themselves. Across Europe as a whole, 1 in 4 young people under the age of 25 is out of work. And in some of the countries of southern Europe, where the euro crisis has hit particularly badly, half of all young people are without work. Now, there really is a question about what can be done at state level, what can be done by governments to try to address this problem. There is a pot of money within the European Union, $8 billion. Grants, loans are going to be assigned to particularly economically disadvantaged parts of Europe to try to help them create jobs for young people. There's also a scheme that's been launched that's called the Youth Guarantee, whereby individual European countries would guarantee their young people that no one should remain more than 4 months without receiving some kind of offer of work or offer of training. A very ambitious target there, and individual governments are meant to come up with plans of how they're going to implement that before the end of the year. Now, there are disagreements within Europe itself. The Germans are critical of the French, for example, for not moving hard enough and fast enough with introducing economic reform. And when you look at the economic outlook for the whole of Europe, growth forecast next year at a little over 1%. Questions have already been raised about how long it will take before the economic recovery, this slow recovery, actually starts to translate into jobs. Jackie Rowland for Inside Story in Paris.
So here are the hard numbers on youth unemployment in Europe. More than 5.5 million people under 25 are out of work. That's almost a quarter of all young people. Greece has the highest rate, running at 57%. It's followed by Spain at 56%, while Italy's young jobless rate is 40%. That's in sharp contrast to Germany, where less than 8% of young people are unemployed. Well, to our discussion in a moment, first we can hear from Jonathan Todd, spokesman for the European Commissioner for Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion. I spoke to him in Brussels and started by asking him what was the EU's big plan to get young people into work.
Well, I mean, it's important to stress there's no single magic solution to the problem, but what we do want is that all member states put in place structural reforms to tackle the problem for the future. And that consists of making sure that within 4 months of a young person becoming unemployed or leaving school, that they either get a quality offer of a job or else they get guidance as regards training or further education or an apprenticeship, which will help them to acquire the skills to boost their chances of getting a job in the future. And all of this requires an investment in the public employment services so as to allow the individual young person to get advice based on their own particular situation, their own skills, their own experience and so on.
There may be a concern, though, with that you're creating almost false employment. I know you're talking about the public sector, but you're still really looking at market forces dictating whether there are jobs on the market. So how will this not really give people jobs that aren't real?
No, on the contrary, what we want is the public employment services, in other words, the advisory services of the member states to give young people the right advice and to steer them in the right direction so that they can find the job that is suited to them. We're not suggesting that false jobs be created. What we're trying to do is improve the matching between what employers are looking for and the young people that have those skills, and at the same time, for those that can't find a job, making sure that they are given the right advice on the right training, the right education, in order to get the skills that employers are looking for. So it is actually very much a market-oriented approach.
Why hasn't the market managed to do this on its own, though? Why does it need you to step in? What is the need of sort of a huge government and indeed European Union initiative to make this happen?
Well, what we're doing is exchanging best practices. It's a system that works well in Austria, it works well in Finland, and there is no reason why it shouldn't work well in every other European country. The fact is that many employers can't find people with the skills that they're looking for. This is particularly true, for example, in information and communications technologies. There are other areas where there are shortages of people, and nobody's going to claim that this solution could resolve Europe's unemployment problems and youth unemployment problems from one day to the next, but it's part of the solution. The other part of the solution, of course, has to be to resolve the underlying economic and financial crisis which has led to these record levels of unemployment in Europe.
Is it a shame that this initiative wasn't brought in 3 years ago, and that we wouldn't be in the situation we're looking at enormous youth unemployment in places like Greece and Spain?
Nobody's going to pretend that this solution is alone going to bring down the record levels of youth unemployment that we have now. I mean, it has to be combined with effective solutions to the underlying financial and economic crisis. But it's true that with this solution, we think that it will help to avoid having such serious problems in the future. It's an investment in human capital. That's what we're talking about.
Just talking about that human capital, how much of a detrimental effect does it have on Europe when so many of the young people can't find work and really don't think there's any prospect of finding work?
Well, it's a huge problem for the young people involved, of course. I mean, if they can't get their first step onto the ladder of the employment market, it can put them off for life, and they can suffer problems of poverty, health problems throughout their life if they can't get started in the employment market. So that's why it's an investment now that will help, that will pay off in the future and avoid future problems.
And how reliant are you on businesses, on, as you say, public sector to be welcoming in this initiative, to want to kind of do a joined up thinking on this? Because without them, you're not going to get very far.
No, it's true. And part of the solution is to ensure that there is good partnerships between employers and public employment services and training and education establishments, because obviously one of the crucial issues is to make sure that people acquire the skills that employers are looking for. There's no point in having skills which are not adapted to the 21st century. Young people really need to acquire the skills and experience that employers want, because otherwise they won't find a job.
A huge challenge. Jonathan, thank you very much indeed for talking to us.
Thank you.
So let's bring in our guest. Joining us from Athens is Evgenia Bosmi, a student who's been looking for a job for the past 2 years. In Madrid, Haslam, Associate Professor at the IE Business School and Executive Director of the Owners and Entrepreneurs Management Programme. And from our London studios, we have Albert Tucker, a trustee of Common Purpose, an organisation that helps prepare young people for the workplace. So Evgenia Bosmi, we've heard from the expert, from the European Commissioner, his spokesman himself. What is it like to be a young person currently in Greece, that currently tops the leaderboard in unemployment, to be looking for work? How is it for you and your friends, really, out there in the job market to be looking right now?
Hello, for me. It's really difficult here in Greece. It's very difficult. We can't find works. We are not more than 25 years old, and we don't have the opportunity to gain our money. our parents have to support us on the basic needs. It's really difficult condition. You think we really have things to offer the country, but there are no opportunities. They can't let us. It's really difficult.
The European leaders are meeting in Paris. Indeed, it includes the Greek Prime Minister, Antonis Samaras. What would you say to them? What do you think that the governments should be doing to try and help your generation, what they're calling a lost generation, get a job?
Okay, to try hard. We are already trying really hard. It was really difficult to find a job in Greece, but now it's nearly impossible. It's not that we don't try, I think. It's the condition is real difficult. The strict measures from the European government are very strict, and they don't help us. Also, our government don't help us. The thing is, it's really difficult, even if we try much more than past years.
Albert Tucker, you have direct experience of trying to work with young people, trying to get people into work. What sort of an impact, not just on the person themselves, but on society is it when you've got such an enormous amount of young people who have no prospect of getting a job?
Yes, I think at Common Purpose we've worked with young leaders and future leaders because we know, and connecting people, because we know when you do that and when young people are inspired and connected, they themselves can create enterprises. And I think here in the UK what we've seen is that some of these schemes, like the guarantee schemes, apprentice schemes, what they've done in effect is actually exacerbate the situation. They've put young people in a loop of low-paid, not very interesting jobs, getting into a training loop and cycle which doesn't progress them, but keeps them in low-paid jobs. And we are telling young people, study hard, work hard, and the future will be better for that. And they come out with their studies, and they can't find a place that will progress them in employment. And this is becoming a global problem. In one of our programs, the TIJA program, which connects young leaders in Arab leaders and future leaders, and European leaders and future leaders, the young leaders in those groups have said what we need actually is to create a global marketplace. And one of the challenges they put as well is, can signature events like the Olympics, the World Cup we're going to see in Doha next year, soon, and signature events in the countries, can they set themselves a target for every 10 million euros, for example, spent? Could we create 100 jobs for young people, real jobs, jobs which will progress them and not just keep recycling them where there are even jobs in those low-paid areas?
So
and the WHO recently...
Sorry to interrupt, but you seem to be saying that the idea that this youth guarantee scheme that the European leaders are talking about, which is about bringing in training, apprenticeships, all that sort of stuff within, you know, very swiftly after you become unemployed, that's not really the way to go forwards, because you are creating some sort of fake job there.
Yeah, I think our experience here in the UK with these kind of schemes is it's tended to descend into the lower level jobs which could be progressed in organizations not being, but these schemes being used to do that, or young people being used for a 4-month training program and then moved on to the next 4-month training program. So I think they should be very cautious not to replicate that. We've had a very bad experience of these kind of schemes here in the UK. They have a role, but they have to be real jobs and real development for young people. We're also quite keen on enterprises, young people's ideas coming into this, because the danger of these schemes is they're still stuck in the old ways, the old opportunities that the crisis has destroyed. Young people have an idea and have different ideas about how we could generate future employment, but they're not in the picture. They don't have a position in the debate and designing that future. I think that's important as well. So the scheme will do some good, but I think there are risks with it, which we've seen here in the UK, which is it can just be used for cheap labor and rolling young people around in training programs, which don't progress them anywhere, doesn't inspire them, and doesn't connect them into the workplace, which is what they've told us at Common Purpose would do it.
Joe Haslam, you're a man that knows business, you're a man that knows entrepreneurship. Do you think that this new youth guarantee scheme is the way to go forward?
Well, yes, I share my doubts as well. It's the problem is who needs the situation more? Is it Europe needs the young people or the young people need Europe? I think the older people in Europe, those people who are defending vested interests, need to start thinking that the problem will very soon become their problem if they don't, the necessity for them to get the young people in the workplace is higher. I think you always have to remember that markets create jobs. Politicians and bureaucrats cannot create jobs. And the job of the politicians is to create a market. In other words, to enforce competitions, to make people be tax compliant, to rigorously allow opportunities so that small companies can become big. And it's when small companies become big that jobs are created. Schemes like this don't really help in that the jobs aren't real jobs. There's an inevitability that when the time comes to the end that the person will be let go. So I think the attitude has to be much bolder. The attitude has to take on competition. The attitude has to be that only the market can create jobs, and how do we prevent market failure and increase market conditions.
And do you think also that we're thinking too small, too European? We should be thinking more global. Do you think that is the key, really, that the leaders are only thinking about their own borders?
Yes, I mean, in the future, one of the things about immigration, and it's one of the things that we see a lot in IE Business School, in future years, people will go out and seek entrepreneurs in the same way that footballers and football teams go all over the world looking for the very best people. In future, we'll be going to Africa, to Asia, to try and get entrepreneurs and really top talent, to bring them back to your country and ask them to set up companies. That will happen, and Europe should be the first place to do that, because there's a real opportunity right now if the politicians would take on that opportunity. Unfortunately, they tend to think of manipulating the statistics in terms of bringing the number down rather than actually solving the problem. And it's incredible that we were talking about this 2 years ago, and when problems aren't fixed, they fester, and it means you have to keep on devoting time to the same problem. They need to solve the problem so that it's solved, and then get on to solve the other problems.
I like it, a World Cup of entrepreneurs. Evgenia Bosmi in Greece, would you be prepared to travel around the world for a job? Are you happy to leave Greece? Would you seek employment wherever it was, or do you want to stay in Greece? And if so, why?
From right now, at this moment, I'm not planning in leaving Greece. But I don't know, maybe after my graduation, I might go abroad if I don't have a job, if I don't have money, if my parents have to offer me my basic needs. I will think it very seriously. And so many people leave Greece in order to find a job to gain money. So I will think of that really seriously if I will be in that condition.
Of course, I'm guessing you'd rather stay in Greece because that's your country, and also if you leave Greece, people like yourself, students, then you're seeing a brain drain. You're seeing educated people leaving your country, which is not good for the future of Greece.
Yeah, okay, we are the future. It's really difficult to find a job here, so we should go abroad. For us right now, I think that the future is abroad. I don't leave Greece, of course. Here's my life, here's my family, here's all people I love. But the condition here is really bad. Salaries are bad, if you have a job, of course. And if you need to go out to find a job and to gain money in order to live, of course I will think to go abroad. Even I have done so many studies, even I speak so many languages. It's not about your studies. Now it's a basic need, I think.
Albert Tucker, that's the key, I guess, really. I mean, when people like Evgenia leaves her country, she takes away her knowledge, her talent. Really, it's the current students are tomorrow's leaders, and really that Greece should be hanging on to its clever people, if you like, but she hasn't got much choice.
Yes, I agree, and I think I agree with the point about Europe is more at risk than everybody else, and we need to see this as an opportunity to build on our traditional strengths. But the fact is, young future leaders are thinking about this already. They think that if we can't actually generate the sufficient growth in Europe, there's growth elsewhere in the world. There are opportunities to take their knowledge elsewhere and help develop global growth. And I think we need to embrace that and see how we can work beyond our borders, beyond our authority, and actually create a global marketplace that's growing, and we can build on skills. It may not need to be a physical, geographical move either, from what they tell us, but that may well happen. And I think it's inevitable, actually, if it carries on like this. What choices do young people have? And young leaders are now, as we speak, are thinking about this, and they see this as one of the ways to the future. So we can't hold it back. What we need to do is to open up the opportunities more in Europe, use what knowledge and expertise we've got. I don't as easily buy into this thing that we are not educated properly and we don't have the expertise. We're not applying it well enough, and we're not developing it well enough, I think, in young people. They will go and find where it can be developed and where they can deliver their skills and be rewarded for it. And I think Europe can do that. All our signature projects should look at developing those young people and opportunities for them a lot more than they're doing at the moment, in a very real way. Otherwise, they'll go where they're inspired, and it will be a loss to Europe. So it's a challenge to us. I'm a real fan of young people in Europe. Most of the ones I come across are hardworking, creative, inventive, and they have answers. But as a couple of them put it to me, we old folks have ruined the world, and now we're blocking them and trying to go back to the world that didn't work. They have other ideas, and I think those ideas will take hold if we're not careful. We've got to support and grow and nurture that. And that's not what we're doing at the moment, I fear.
Joe Haslam, you said earlier that it's not politicians that create jobs, it's markets that create jobs, it's businesses that create jobs. But should we really be looking to businesses to be recognising they almost have a social responsibility to help the youth of today, instead of possibly, certainly in places like Southern Europe, concentrating more on permanent employees and not the new recruits?
Okay, well, first of all, let me differentiate between business when I talk about small and medium-sized and large business. Remember that the jobs come from small businesses getting bigger. That's where jobs come from. Large companies tend to look for efficiency, and then that reduces jobs. Politicians need to spend a lot more time with the small and medium-sized enterprises and much less time with big businesses. The other issue about this training and this program about finding 4 jobs is that you can't contrast a country like Finland, which is the best education system in the world, with a country like Spain that has below average. There's very different conditions that prevail. Also, the kind of jobs that people want. I think younger people want a different kind of job than perhaps their parents had. They're interested in issues like sustainability, they're interested in transparency, they want to see open data sets made available, like they want to see jobs based on mobility rather than the kind of things that their parents had. When I talk to politicians, that's a real problem I have. They think of a job very much as a 9-to-5 kind of thing. They don't really think of jobs as things that can be done from home, things that can be done across borders, things that can be done with much more creativity with people in different languages. I think that's one of the biggest problems. You have to define exactly what a job is. And I'm very hopeful. I think things like singularity, I think like when markets open up, you're going to have smartphones in the hand of 3 and 4 billion people in the world within the next few years. That's going to bring incredible opportunities. And I think Europe has very good historic links with parts of the world where there's growth. And I think that's the kind of thing we need to focus on. I think European politicians need to think that they need young people and they need emerging markets more than young people and emerging markets need them.
You sound almost optimistic. Just briefly, do you hold that actually the markets will sort themselves out and young people will start to see that they can get work if they are more inventive, as you're describing?
Yes, well, you have to be optimistic. I mean, if you're not optimistic, what's the point? But look, I mean, I think, Europe is a democracy and people can be voted out. And I think, change can come very quickly. You speak to people in other parts of the world where change has come on. So I am optimistic. I think biggest of all is that there were once industries that could only be created by governments, whereas now things like the singularity moments will mean that people can go and individuals can go and create industries that once governments were only capable of. And things like healthcare and education, there are fantastic opportunities for the future. That's what I mean about that. The politicians need to understand much more about the young people, because the young people, it's them who will be paying their pensions in years to come. And maybe they mightn't be so generous if the people who have power now aren't generous and helpful to the young people.
That's a warning, definitely, to them. I would like to thank all 3 of you very much for joining us. Evgenia Bosmi for joining us from Athens, Joe Haslam there in London, and in Madrid, and Albert Tucker in London. Thank you for your thoughts. And thank you for watching. And if you'd like to let us know what you think, you can always tweet at AJ Inside Story. I'm Sue Turton. Bye for now.